Hi everybody, I'm David here, and welcome to the next episode of Chilling3000 Hangouts here on the Chilling3000 Network. I hope everybody is having a great hump day here today on this 7th of February 2024, and I hope everybody's having a great day here today, as on this episode of Chilling3000 Hangouts, we are going back doing interviews here in 2024, with this first one going to be an interview with Locked On Canes podcast host Alex Donno, who covers the college Florida Canes team for football and sometimes basketball here and there. So we're going to sit back and talk about how he got into podcasting on the Locked On Sports Network, and also his thoughts of what's going on in NFL as well towards the end, which we filmed this past December. So if you see, I was talking about the NFL being outdated, whatever you like to pronounce it, updated, whatever I mean. You'll know why. As for who we think, but no matter what, it's still going to be a great interview for you guys as entertainment. Now, you may notice here a little bit of something different. We are here on a Wednesday instead of a Friday, because a few days ago, I have decided to change our schedule from Friday nights to Wednesdays. Wednesday afternoon, specifically at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. The main reason why is because, I'll explain here the best I can. Mostly because Fridays, the weekend in general, I like to keep the weekends to myself. Because I've been noticing for the past couple of months with all the tapings I've been doing, and also been noticing I've been busy a lot on the weekends, especially this past month. With that in mind, I just want the whole weekend to myself. So, in case if I'm going to be very busy that weekend, I want to have the weekend to myself, so I can have more focus on that, or I can focus on many other projects I need to catch up on during the weekend. So, that is one of the reasons. Of course, I usually like to watch hockey on Fridays or listen to it on Fridays. And Saturday, I usually like to watch basketball on Sundays, whatever. So, with that, I just want to have the weekends to myself, get away from everything out there, and just enjoy and have a decent weekend. The other reason is Jordan has decided to go back doing a weekly basis program of his majority show for 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific Fridays. So I don't want to ruin our program. So and also Danny works on Friday, mostly on Friday, as well. And I don't want to leave him out of the shows. So with that, I want to have everybody have a chance to watch. So with that in mind, and plus I want to have the weekends to myself. And also I've been noticing the views have been a little saggy on Fridays recently. I have decided to change it to Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. It gives me enough time to not only watch whatever I want to watch an hour or 2 hours from that time, but also a chance for everybody to watch as they're just getting home, having dinner, and can watch a great interview here on the Chilling3000 Network, or whatever the case may be. So that's what I'm going to be doing at 6 p.m. Eastern Time Wednesday. Sorry for the long explicit explaining, but just a few days ago I've decided to make this change, and I think this is for the best. And whenever I get a job this year, which I really hope I could get a job sometime, a part-time job at the very least sometime this year, our schedule may dramatically change to bi-weekly or whatever I feel like. I mean, this might be bi-weekly right now, but in case if I need to change it for different days or whatever I feel like, more details on that will be at the community pages of our social medias. Now, before we get started with the interview with Alex Donno, I have some topics I'm going to talk about here very quickly as I possibly can before we go to the interview. if I don't have enough time to get into those topics, as I said in the description, then I'll do it at the end of the program or at the next episode. So let's get into it. First, the awards. So I want to thank everybody for watching the second annual Chilling3000 Hangouts Awards program. That was this past Friday night. It really meant a lot to me for all those who tuned into the live chat, or also or also here on the stream itself. I want to thank so much to Paul Warner for helping me with most of the things he did, with the envelopes, the presentations that he's been doing for the past few years. It really means a lot to me into that award show. Apologies if I wasn't 100% myself or paying attention to the camera, because I didn't notice until afterwards. I was on my phone a lot during the show. For me, I was just having a tough week, so if I didn't seem 100% myself, even I thought I was myself. I had a blast on there. It's just that the reason why I wasn't looking at the camera as much is because I was just not having the best week. But otherwise, I would have been more focused on the camera, more wide awake and all that. But hey, that's just me. Sometimes when I get home after a week like that, or just a regular day like that, then you don't have a lot of energy. But I still had a blast, a great time with people, who watched. We had 23 live viewers, which I believe that is a breaking record. That truly means a lot to me. That's how far we got into this program. And even though they don't come here on the show live chat all the time, from time to time, frequently, but for those who are just supporting it in general, it really means a lot. So thank you all so much. Thank you all so much, and it really means a lot to me. So I look forward to seeing what happens next year at the awards, and hopefully it'll be much sooner than we tried to this year with the scheduling problems that we had. But I promise you we'll try to do it sometime during the holiday season next year for sure, because usually I like it to have the first episode of 2020 of the new year. So, but that's just me. But anyway, the Super Bowl, that is coming up this Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 3:30 p.m. Pacific on CBS. Now, for the teams of the Chiefs and 49ers, I'm more of a fan of 49ers, but I don't really mostly care, because this is the same Super Bowl that we saw a few years ago. And of course, with the Chiefs, they're back at it again as the dynasty continues. With I don't know how many Super Bowls they've been in this past decade. I mean, the past 10 years, I meant to say. To be more politically correct, I guess. I don't know how that term works. But, it's just, I don't like the Chiefs. I don't like how the NFL is going with this, shifting effect. I mean, I have respect for Taylor Swift as what she's accomplished. But I just don't like how the NFL is taking it. There's a bunch of people out there who are seriously thinking this is scripted, and with this favoritism of the Chiefs for the past couple of years, especially with all of the sudden Taylor Swift coming into the picture because of Travis Kelce. And if you looked at the NFL logo, it was purple and red, I believe it was. Victor can correct me on that one. But then, Count Victor, by the way, folks, the host of the Popcorn Pan podcast. But now all of a sudden, it's the Chiefs. That tells you something. And Chiefs 49ers, it was supposed to be Ravens and 49ers, but of course with the total Taylor Swift coming into the picture, it's now the Chiefs instead of the Ravens. I don't know what to say, but am I going to watch the Super Bowl this year? Maybe a little bit of it. Maybe towards the end, because I have I have better things to do. I've always been a big fan of the Super Bowl, but I've been watching it every year for a lot of years now. So maybe this is the year I might take a step back and only watch a little bit of it. Maybe mostly at the end of the Super Bowl. But that's just me. Because with this whole NFL favoritism, and now all of a sudden they don't even want the 49ers to have, they had to move to a certain practice facility or whatever it was, what the news just came out recently. I'm just like, why do they have to move? And the Chiefs got their, practice field all to themselves. But not with the 49ers. That tells you something. Like, were they forced to move? Was there something that happened to the field? I don't know. I'm a little bit out of the loop as for exactly what this news article is. But all I know is something fishy is going on with NFL recently with the Chiefs, and now this came out. It's just a bunch of nonsense, cracker jacks. So that's all my thoughts on the Super Bowl. I mean, if they want to go this way, feel free. But even though you should stop. But if they don't want to listen, feel free. That's what I'm going to say. Next, LeBron James Knicks rumors that's been going around, speculations. I'm not quite sure about that. I think LeBron James is going to stick with the Lakers for the rest of his career. Me personally, that's how I picture it. I don't see him going to the Knicks. I don't see that trade happening anytime soon. Now I might be saying, you're not an NBA expert. What do you mean? Well, first of all, I do like the NBA. I like the NHL, MLB, even MLS, maybe a little bit. I like all sports. I like to follow. I'm more of an expert of MLB, so that's one sport that you can, talk to, debate about. But, I'm just looking out as a casual NBA fan. That I watch the games from time to time. I see who's on certain teams. I'm just making predictions that I don't see LeBron James with the Lakers. But he's the main star of that team. Yes, he put that timing emoji on X, but for me, that doesn't explain anything of what's to come. And as for getting traded, yes, they're struggling ever since the in-season tournament, which I thought something like that would happen. By the way, but I don't know. We'll see. But all I know is the Lakers said they're not trading LeBron James, so with this whole rumors about him possibly getting traded to the Knicks, I don't see that happening. I know that always started with Stephen A. Smith's suggestions and everything, but I just don't see that happening, unfortunately. Because I do not like the Lakers, and as much as I don't like LeBron James too, as a Boston fan that is, because you all know the story, I don't see him going to the Knicks. If he does, much respect. Anyway, Bobby Witt Jr. has signed a big contract with the Kansas City Royals. A $300 million contract for the next 11 years. That is crazy for a young player like that. We've been seeing this happening in Major League Baseball with these young stars getting contract extensions for $300 million deals in the past couple of years, and I really love that. I truly believe Bobby Witt Jr. is definitely a Kansas City Royals star, the main star of that team. And their offseason has been better than the Red Sox. Has been better than, the Padres. I don't know what's up the Padres right now. Just those type of big market teams. They've been stealing away players. Let me just name a few. As we hope to end this by the next 5 minutes, because I have to play the interview for you guys. They got Hunter Renfroe, who was on the Angels. They got Michael Wacha, who was from the Padres a year ago. Those are two key players for your team. They got, who else did they get? Will Smith, who was on the Rangers a year ago, who's won every World Series. Will Smith since 2022. I mean, no, 2021, because it was on. Well, actually, the 2020, right? No. No, yeah, 2021, because he was on the Braves in 2020. Didn't win that one. Will Smith, he was on the Braves in 2020. So, ever since 2021, Will Smith has won every World Series. Could that mean KC could win it this year? We'll see, because they got key players. So, Renfroe, Michael Wacha. Who else did they get? Fraser. That's big. Sandy Leon, Red Sox, former Red Sox catcher, former Cleveland Guardians catcher. I mean, yes, Sandy Leon is somewhat at the very end of his career, but that is surprising. And I believe that was for a minor league contract. So I was kind of half joking, but still. And they also got Ryan Fitzgerald from the Red Sox, who was a pretty good player that was with the Red Sox. And I mean, yeah, it's kind of crazy of what their offseason is, this year that was the Red Sox could have. And lastly, I forgot to put this in the description, but that just happened yesterday. Jose Altuve, Astros for life. 5 years, about $125 million, I believe it was. I'll have to double check. But that is able to last this long with the Astros, and I'm not surprised he is an Astro for life. I mean, the other team will want him. So, yeah, Astro for life, Jose Altuve. So that's going to be it for the news I want to explain here, and I will take it right to the interview with Alex Donno, and I will see you right after that. Enjoy this hour interview. All right, everybody, I'm here with our next guest here on the program. He is a sports podcaster from the Lockdown Sports Network as he follows the Miami Hurricanes. Please welcome Alex Donno. How are you doing, Alex?
David, I'm doing so well. Thank you so much for having me. I hope you're doing well.
Yes, I am. As we're filming this, it is currently the Christmas season and also signing season for college football. As of today, actually, no, this Wednesday. But it's one of the most exciting times of the year, and of course, this episode will be posted on another day, so that's why you see Christmas lights behind me. So, would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself, Alex? Donno?
Yeah, well, again, I appreciate you having me on. I've been working in South Florida media for, it's been about 20 years now. I'm getting old really fast. I attended the University of Miami as a student, and I started doing student radio there around 2004. So I guess I'm a little I mean, by the time people watch this, it may be 20 years at that point. So we're hitting that 2-decade mark, and since that time, I've done a lot of work on the sports stations in the area, mainly 560 WQAM. I'm still on there frequently, and I do post-game shows after Miami Dolphins games and after Miami Hurricanes football games. And, I've worked on and off on Miami Heat broadcasts and Florida Panthers hockey broadcasts over the years. So it's just a lot of fun. I mean, I'm very into sports, as you would imagine. So, being able to work in sports for most of my life and for my entire adult life, it's truly been a thrill.
Awesome. And it is good to cover sports, and you're doing a great thing on the Lockdown Sports Network. You have a great audience, 13.3K subscribers, and that's for how long you've been doing that YouTube channel. It says April 2022. So, over a year is pretty good. Good job of getting over 10K subs during that span of time.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's just
So,
I think I think people appreciate the fact that we're on literally every day. I mean, occasionally I'll take a day off on the weekends, but we try to bring people up to date
yeah.
news and conversations.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And as for those who were wondering, how did I discover Alex here? Well, he actually discovered me on Instagram. He followed me, so I followed him back, and I was just like, a sports podcaster, pretty cool. I don't know. How did you discover my Instagram, by the way, if I may ask?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you must be a popular guy because I think you popped up in a suggestion, and I thought, okay, this guy seems pretty
Okay.
cool. Well, let me follow him. And so I guess Instagram knows what they're doing because I'm happy we connected. The algorithm did something right this time, David.
Right for once, that is.
Exactly.
um, but I think even before you followed me, I've heard of the Lockdown Sports Network before because of my friend Snowman Multimedia. He works on like the Lockdown Patriots podcast host, which I hope to interview someday. I just haven't find a way to connect with them because I am a Patriots fan for football. That is, so hopefully in the near future I can have some other folks from the Lockdown Sports Network to grow that feed my YouTube channel just to give the reports on their teams from time to time. And hopefully I can get that sports audience because I've been struggling a little bit about that because my YouTube channel is mostly about games, me doing games for content. But ever since I launched this network at the beginning of this year, I've been trying. Of course, I've done sports videos before, but I now have two sports shows for baseball and football, and I'm trying to get the sports audience, which hopefully I can find next year. So,
I hope so. Good luck.
um, yeah, yes, indeed. Um, so how did you guys start on the Lockdown Kings podcast on the Lockdown Sports Network?
Yeah, so I'm very friendly with the co-host of one of the shows. It's a very big network, which is awesome because like you mentioned the Patriot show. They basically have a show for every professional and many of the college teams, and they even have some specialty shows. Like there's the Locked On NFL show, which kind of covers the whole league,
Yeah.
and a good friend of mine for years has been co-hosting the Locked On Bets show, the gambling show. And so he knew a couple of years ago, he
Mm.
knew, hey, like there's a need for some more shows. And he and I had been friendly for many years, and he knew that one of the shows they were looking to add, I think years ago, there was a Locked On Canes show, but they had been inactive for about 2 years. And so they were looking for somebody to pick it up, and my friend recommended
Okay.
me, and I got hooked up with the network, and it was one of the greatest decisions I ever made because I obviously I had, like you, I had heard of the network, and I was interested. I already was a regular listener of the Locked On Dolphins show with Kyle Krabs, who does a really good job, and the Locked On Heat show. So I didn't know how great the
Mm.
network would be, but everybody is really friendly and helpful, and it's a really professionally run organization. So I appreciate everything they've done to help me.
Awesome. And did you like how long you been a Miami Hurricanes? Is it because of that guy who suggested you to do the podcast, or went to that college, or what? How did you get that connection to the team?
Yeah, I've been a fan really my entire life because I had connections through family to the university, and I was born and grew up in the area. I'm actually, I'm about to. This background is a virtual background, but I'm only about 8
Yep.
miles away from the campus. And I grew up in the area, and I was able to attend the university between 2003 to 2007. So really, for longer than I can remember, there's pictures of me as like a 1-year-old holding a football with a Miami logo on it. That I don't remember the photo being taken, but there it is. So it's pretty much been my entire life, and I had opportunities in many different capacities to cover the football team and the basketball team, prior to picking up the show on the Locked On Network about a year and a half ago. I've been a part of the network radio broadcast for a long time. I did the pregame show for many years. I've been doing the postgame shows instead of pregame for about the past 4 years, or 4 years, something like that. But it's been about 11 years that I've been involved on the radio broadcast. So it's been a big thing. Other assignments have kind of come and go, but I've been doing stuff with the University of Miami for a long time.
That's cool. And as for college football, I'm basically a fan of any New England team, even though their teams are kind of rough. But as college football games, I know that's a one, and that was this past right before Thanksgiving. I went to see a UConn UMass game,
Nice.
which was an interesting experience. But I usually just check to see what college football or basketball games now, since it's college basketball season now. I just been going back and forth to see what games are on, because I don't have ESPN Plus. If I really wanted to follow a specific team, like or every week, I'll have to get ESPN Plus for that. I don't have that. I don't know how that works. So I just basically flip from games and see what is there. What team is better in the university? Is it the football team or the basketball team?
Well, the football team is a lot more popular, but the basketball team has been carrying the water for the last 5 or 6 years. Obviously, Miami, University of Miami has the background of 1980s, 1990s into 2001, 5 national championships in football within about a 19-year span, which is like, it's
Wow.
obviously Alabama has done stuff like that, but not too many other schools did that much winning within that type of a period of time. But the football team has been they've been kind of in a state of transition for the last several years. I think that they're on the right track now, but the basketball team, David, is what has really been kind of holding the banner for Miami athletics for the last few years. Head coach Jim Larinaga has been with Miami for, I want to say, the last 7 or 8 years, but it's been the last 3 years where he's really started to find this NCAA tournament success. 3 straight years Miami was in. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they got to the Sweet 16 round. They got to the Elite 8 the following year. They got to the Final Four last year. It's early in the season. They did suffer a couple of tough losses already in the month of December. They just fell out of the top 25, so they've got a few things to figure out. But over the past few years, it's been the basketball team has been making deep tournament runs, and the football team has been a little bit stuck in quicksand.
Understood. My next question is, what made you want to do the podcast along with the Locked On College Football Live show that you also do?
Yeah, so I've been, as I mentioned, I've been kind of in the business for a really long time. I've done a lot of traditional radio, and I think over the past 3 or 4 years, I've really understood that doing digital content it's a great way to kind of expand your reach, and it's also just a smart thing to get more involved in, because traditional radio is not what it used to be. Talking AM, FM sports radio, just because everybody's streaming now. Everybody's listening to podcasts now, and you can listen. It didn't used to be this way, but you can listen to podcasts in the car, and a lot of people are kind of replacing traditional radio with that. So it's just smart to start to get into that. So when I heard about the opportunity for Locked On, I thought it sounded like a good opportunity, and also the fact that for me, I already loved covering the University of Miami, so it was a pretty natural fit to give it a try. And then, you know, I saw the way that the network works for a couple of months. I knew, hey, this is a good place to be.
Awesome. And when you first joined the network, what was your main goal for being part of it? And you've been part of the network for, explained about over a year as we're doing this King's podcast. But what was your main goal of joining it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm a little eclectic in the fact that I'm not a big long-term goal guy. Like I kind of do everything sort of day to day, month to month, and it's not to say I don't have ambitions. Like I've always known, hey, I want the show to hopefully be a little bit better every day and grow a little bit bigger every day. But I don't know. I kind of looked at it as, hey, this seems like an opportunity to do hopefully a fun show and keep people informed. And I didn't really know what it could turn into. I mean, it's gotten, I'm really humbled by the fact that we've received so much support and that the show has probably grown at a faster rate than I expected. So I'm very thankful for that. But as far as goals, I think my goal was, hey, this network comes recommended. People who work on it seem to enjoy it. Let me give it a try, and this seems like something I can do.
All right, pretty cool. Have you ever help you get into this Locked On Sports Network?
Sorry, can you ask that again? I lost you. I think I had a little connection breakdown.
Oh, okay. I think it was on my end, but my question was: did you cover other different teams, Locked On Sports Network, or in general? And also, in college, did you study journalism to help you get to this?
Yeah, great question. With the Locked On Network, I've only covered college sports. Obviously, Locked On Canes is the main show that I do. You know, you mentioned I've done the Locked On College Football Kickoff live show, which only runs during the season, so that's going to be on hiatus until I guess the final week of August for next year. But I really enjoyed doing that. I've also done frequent guest spots on Locked On ACC, the conference show that covers the Atlantic Coast Conference. But yeah, prior to joining Locked On, I've covered a lot of different teams. I've worked on the radio broadcasts off and on over the years and covered the Florida Panthers, the NHL team in South Florida, the Miami Heat, the Miami Dolphins. There were a couple of years, like around, 11, 12 years ago, where I even worked on the FIU football radio broadcast for a little bit. I did that for a couple of years. You know, I've also extensively covered soccer. I briefly worked for the MLS team down here, Inter Miami, when they first launched. And I've also, over the years, I haven't done it so much in the last year or so, but I've also extensively covered mixed martial arts and boxing. So I've worn a lot of different hats over the years.
Oh yeah, and jerseys too. Did you play any sports growing up?
Yeah, my primary sport growing up was soccer. I played that for I want to say competitively for about 10 years. I did not try to pursue it in college. I wasn't quite that good, but I played it growing up, and I played varsity level in high school. And then that was my primary sport when I got into my teenage years. Like prior to that, I did play a little bit of baseball when I was younger. I didn't enjoy playing it as much as I enjoyed watching it. I did train some martial arts as a kid. Yeah, everybody in my generation, everybody was into karate because of the Karate Kid. So I did that for a couple of years. And I played a little bit of basketball when I was in elementary school. So I tried everything. Soccer was the one that I was like the least bad at. Like that was the one where, hey, I can actually go out there and not embarrass myself. So that was the one I played most. I didn't play much competitive football. I did play some intramural flag football, and I've always been an avid fan, even though it was my parents weren't too keen on me playing tackle football, so I didn't get into that as much.
Understood. Um, who's your favorite Miami Hurricanes football and basketball player?
Oh man, I would say there's a lot to choose from. Probably the guy that got me the most pumped up in terms of Miami football players was Ken Dorsey. He was the national championship quarterback in the 2001 season. He only, he was a starting quarterback for almost 4 full seasons, and he only lost 2 games as a starter. He lost
Wow.
a game. Yeah, in 2000, he lost a game against Washington. And in 2002, he lost his last game in overtime for the national championship against Ohio State. So he had an amazing career. In terms of Hurricanes basketball, that's a really tough one because there have been some good ones in recent years. Man, I was a big fan of Miami had a point guard going back about 10 years. When they had, I know that I mentioned that the team's been really hot over the last 3 years, but they had a really good team in 2013, and they had a Sweet 16 tournament run. And Shane Larkin was the point guard, and he was a lot of fun. He was a really great dude, a lot of fun to cover. So I've got some fond memories of him.
Very cool. All right, let's get we'll take a pause and start your reporting for the Miami Hurricanes. We'll start with basketball first. What do you think of the team currently right now in this part of the season?
I think that it's a team that are still figuring each other out a little bit. They lost a couple of important scorers from last year, like Isaiah Wong, who was the top scorer a season ago. Thankfully they were able to keep Norchad Omier, their top big man and shot blocker and defensive player, but it's been a little clunky so far to start the season. They've had a couple of bad losses, including a blowout loss against Kentucky and a surprising blowout loss against Colorado that I don't think anybody saw coming. So I really just think that, I usually, because even last year when they made a run to the Final Four, they weren't really that cohesive until they got into the ACC schedule, like, into February is when they started to kind of hit their form. And so I'm hoping that's going to be the case against this year because things have looked a little bit disjointed and they tend to struggle to win games when they don't shoot well from 3. So I think that's kind of something they're trying to work on. But one of the more interesting things, I've covered a lot of different Hurricanes basketball coaches over the years, and I've never covered anybody like Jim Larinaga because anytime that his team may have a weakness or face some adversity, he always seems to find an answer. Like last season, before they made a run to the Final Four, the team was very small. And so it's like, how can they rebound? How can they contend? But they were able to find ways to adjust to that and end up, one of the top 4 teams in the country when it was all said and done. So I'm curious to see what sort of remedies he may have to getting things looking more like they've looked the last couple of years.
What team is their biggest threat?
Ooh, oh man. Well, they're in the ACC, so there's always going to be a handful of threats like Duke, Clemson doing well this season. You always look at North Carolina, so it's a buzzsaw of a conference. So and obviously Miami's got a bet. What's that?
What about UConn?
UConn knocked them out of the tournament last year. So no question, UConn is a huge threat, and that's really been a dynasty in college basketball. So, yeah, I mean UConn last season was just in a class of their own. So that's a big threat for anybody.
Oh yeah, definitely. Now going into the football wise for this college here, what do you think of what they will be like in the 2024 season after this season?
Yeah, they're continuing to improve their roster. They in the 2023 season, they started really strong. They started 4-0, and they were a top, I think, 15 team at one time, and then they had a terrible month of October where their quarterback Tyler Van Dyke, who's actually no longer with the program, he transferred to Wisconsin, was throwing interceptions galore. And then they found their form a little bit at the end of the season. They ended up finishing 7-5, which was a little bit of a disappointment. They did qualify for a bowl game, but 7-5 was a little bit lower than the expectation. I thought they could win 8 or 9 games last year, but they are trending towards a top 5 recruiting class. And they had a top 7 recruiting class last year, and a lot of those players who were impactful as freshmen last year, like Ruben Bain on the defensive line, and Mark Fletcher at running back, and Francis Malinois at offensive tackle. These guys are going to be heading into their sophomore years, and I think they're going to have an even bigger impact on the field. But the big question right now is wondering who the starting quarterback is going to be for next year, because they're looking at players in the transfer portal to replace Tyler Van Dyke, who's the former quarterback who left after an up and down season. So a lot of how they do next year, I believe they're going to have a better team, so they should be able to win, upwards of anywhere between 8 to 10 games next year. But I think it's going to be really important to see who the starting quarterback is, because I think the offensive line and defensive line will be in really good shape, but they do have some important spots to fill now.
All right. My next question is, do you also watch NFL?
Yes, I do. Primarily focusing, of course, on the Miami Dolphins. I still do cover them, but I watch the entire league because it's it's good. I get more passionate about college football, but obviously the NFL is those are the big leagues, right?
Yeah.
I mean, only like, I don't know,
Mhm.
5-10% of college players make it to the NFL. So that is the top competition. I do watch it. I do enjoy it. I play fantasy football, which is always fun. It's fun when you win. So I didn't have as much fun this year doing that.
Do you watch it on Red Zone?
Yeah,
The
it's
NFL you watch on?
funny. Yeah, I don't watch as much Red Zone. I have used the Red Zone channel before, but I
Oh,
haven't watched much Red Zone the last couple of years, because since I do the Dolphins, I do post game shows for the Dolphins games the last 3 years, and they usually play at 1 o'clock. The 1 o'clock Eastern
yeah.
time, that's when the red zone is great. So it's like, if I've got to focus on one game, then the red zone takes a little bit away from that. So I love the red zone channel. I subscribe to it, on and off for many years, but I haven't really used it for about the past 3 years or so, since I've been doing Dolphins post games much. I mean, whenever, if the Dolphins don't play at 1 o'clock, then I fire up the red zone. Sometimes I'll get it for the 4 o'clock games, but I haven't watched it as much the last
Yeah.
couple of years.
Understood. My next question is about your podcast you do. How much research do you do before each episode, and like what resources do you use to make sure there's post game or pre games, or for the YouTube channel?
No, it's a great question. It's hard to even say when the research like starts and ends, because it's kind of a lifestyle. I mean, as far as like actually taking notes and like, this is what I'm going to talk about on an episode today. I'll usually start doing that, I don't know, around 8 in the morning, and I'll take notes for an hour to an hour and a half, and then I'll do my episode. But I'm always keeping up with what's going on. And as far as like where the research gets done, a lot of different places. For me, as someone covering primarily covering college football, a lot of my research gets done on place, especially this time of year when you're mostly talking recruiting and transfer portal. I lean heavily on recruiting services, places like 24/7 Sports, Rivals, On3 Sports. various people that I chat with who know things. Some know more than others. I do frequent message boards, which can be a surprisingly good source of information. Sometimes just nonsense, but other times good information. So I spend a lot of time on places like that. Obviously when I'm doing a post game show, the only prep you can do is watching the game. That's about all you can do in that regard. But when it comes to actually like putting together an episode of Locked On Canes or a talk show, I read a lot. I'll go to places like ESPN.com is like, it's a little bit more useful for like pro sports than they don't get too deep into the weeds like with recruiting and stuff like that. So I primarily use the recruiting sites. But if you're doing NFL research, local newspapers as well, they all have websites. So I read local newspapers, not just in South Florida, but other places. Like, I was doing post game after the Dolphins and the Jets the other day. And one of the places I went to was the New York Post website to see, hey, this is what they were saying about, the Jets performance and that. So a lot of reading. Honestly, there's for me anyway, everyone prepares differently, I'm sure. But for me, there's actually more reading than actually watching. Like the reading is a big part of it.
Same we use the same material like that for radio play-by-play too for the Kings.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, a lot of that. Yeah.
You have a routine of guests, every day on the program. Have you ever interviewed any players or coaches?
Yes. My first criteria for looking at guests are people I know are going to provide good content and will be entertained. That's why I use a lot of the same people over and over again, because I know, hey, most people tend to either like this person or at the very least, good or bad, they care what this person has to say. So yeah, I have I interview a lot of former players. And I've interviewed some recruits, like high school players. It's always a little bit more complicated getting players that are actually active, because they have these set schedules and kind of set with the athletic program the sorts of interviews that they do. So that's always a little bit more of a challenge. But yeah, we've had the opportunity to interview like right before the football season started. Actually, I was able to do an in-person interview with 3 guys who played on the team this past year. So I was able to. I have had some opportunities to interview current players, but we do lean on a lot of former players, because the former players always have strong opinions.
Oh yeah, very true. Um, Jason ever reached out to you about the podcast, and also possibly want to work with you, for the podcast, like want to help with certain things, like haven't they ever reached out to you?
Yeah, in different forms. I mean, they are. I'm very pleased that I've been a credentialed part of the media, so I'm able to attend games in the press box, which obviously gives me extra access for the show, and I'm able to attend press conferences and player availabilities, which is always nice. And they've been super accommodating. And different levels. So sometimes you'll be able to kind of hear feedback and book things actually through the organization. Other times you might hear from players' families. And that's one of the things that I've been most thankful for is if ever I hear from the mother or the father, and sometimes the grandparents of people who play on the team, that they enjoy the show and stuff like that, that always makes me feel great. And it's usually nice things. There was only one time when I heard negative feedback from a player's parent, which I'm not going to tell you who that was, because I don't want to, I don't want to make anybody look bad or sound bad. But there was one time when I reached out, when I was a parent reached out to me because they didn't like something I said. And listen, I may have, disagreed with, what my intentions were when I said what I said. At the same time, as a parent myself, I'm not the parent of an athlete. I'm the parent of a 5-year-old, but it's kind of a different thing. But as a parent, I can understand if you think someone's saying something, negative or unfair about your child. I totally get it. And I didn't want to argue the point. I was very apologetic about it, but primarily I hear positive things from player parents and grandparents, and nothing makes me feel better, honestly. If I hear from a coach or a staff member, that feels good, but when I hear from a parent or a grandparent that enjoys what I'm doing, that just makes me feel fantastic.
That's cool. And my next is, what equipment do you use for your podcast?
Yeah, it complicated and basic at the same time. I've seen some people who do content like myself who have this like crazy set of monitors. I do, and maybe at some point I'll make it a little bit bigger and grander, but I use a MacBook Pro. That's what I use with an external webcam. But the big thing for me is someone who uses a green screen. And there you go. And the reason why, yeah, I love it. That's probably the same one I've got. The reason why I use a green screen is because for a time I don't do as much different YouTube shows, but for a time I was doing a couple different types of shows, and I needed to have different backgrounds. Like I couldn't be in front of the same background for different shows, so I started using a green screen. And the thing about when you use a green screen, if you want to make it look good, your lighting has to pop. So I am looking at 3 very bright lights that shine in my face to make sure that the green screen doesn't get drowned out. And I use this is a Shure MV7 microphone. I think is what this is, which has been serving me pretty well. But before this, I also at one point, which is also good, I've used a Blue Yeti microphone. I've recommended that to people. I currently use the Shure MV7, and I plug it into the MacBook through an adapter, and the lighting, the microphone, the adapter, plug and play, good to go with that.
Pretty cool. As for the Locked On Sports Today podcast, you appeared on that before, right? I don't know if I asked you that already, but you appeared on that one, right?
Yes, I have. So what that is, and the Locked On Sports Today is it's a really cool feature that the Locked On Network uses. It's a 24/7 streaming channel. Like it's never idle, which is like that's not common for YouTube. Like the way on Locked On Canes, like when I'm on, or I'm posting videos throughout the day. Locked On Sports Today is streaming 24 hours a day. And so, throughout the course of 24 hours, they'll either bring on, a host like myself or for any other team, for about 20 minutes to talk about like news stories, or, I'm sure in the middle of the night, they probably replay some videos that were taped earlier, but there's always something streaming on the channel, which is cool. So every now and then I turn up on there.
Pretty cool. And what days during the week do you go on there?
Yeah, so with the Locked On Sports Today, it's kind of whenever they want to plug me in. I'm sure it's based mostly on when something bigger happens. So it could be twice a week, could be 0 times a week, just sort of depending on what else is going on in sports. As far as Locked On Canes goes, like I do basically an episode or 2 episodes per day. Kind of anytime something happens and I feel like talking about something, I'll produce an episode. So. Occasionally I'll take a Sunday off or a Saturday off, but I don't know. Usually I could put anywhere between like 6 to 10 episodes out in a week, just depending on how busy of a week it is.
Have you ever wanted this podcast to be on, on a different social media platform, or even on television, or maybe on the radio broadcast station in Miami? Have you ever wanted to make a big change, like for example, maybe for 2024, make a change to the podcast? Ever thought about that?
Not really. I think I like the format and like where the show is available. I mean, being able to be both an audio version on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the usual spots, I think is the most important thing, because I've been able to, and I still do from time to time, do a traditional radio show, but it's just different in terms of, and I like the way it is with YouTube and podcast content versus AM radio is like, when I'm doing an episode of Locked On Canes, I can do, 25 to 30 minutes. And I like to talk. So I can fill time, no question, but I don't have to fill time. Like I can just, I can talk for 28 minutes about, the most important stories, not waste any time with filler, not waste anyone's time talking about, maybe some people care, but I don't feel like people care that much about my personal life. Like they want to know what's going on. So I could just give you, I can give you like 3 hours of news in 28 minutes, right? Whereas, I've done over the years, I've done talk radio shows where I could be on for 4 hours, and it's like, you're on for 4 hours. Okay. Maybe I have the same amount of information that I do in a 28-minute Locked On episode, but I've got to stretch this over 4 hours because it's completely different. So as far as what I do on the Locked On Canes podcast, I think it's perfect for that format. It's good for YouTube. I think it's good for the audio podcasts, and I wouldn't really change too much about it.
Pretty cool. Now let's say you want to do an episode of Locked On Kings for that specific day because it's an everyday podcast. News happens, like what if no breaking news is happening? What do you do for an episode? Like, do you just do a history lesson or just take the day off?
So if there's like nothing going on, which is it doesn't happen as often as people think. Like people are always like, hey, like, well, what if there's literally nothing going? It happens a few times a year. It doesn't happen as often as people think, but what I would like to do in something like that, like you asked me earlier about interviewing players, when you're at like the most boring part of the off season, which is like at certain points in the summer, like before they start practicing, there's a couple of slower months, like June and July are pretty slow, right? During months like that, that's when I'll reach out to former players and former coaches who have stories to tell, right? They can talk about the glory days and people enjoy that. I mean, there's a time and a place for that, right? Or maybe I can do some like, reviews, all-time lists, stuff that are kind of timeless, right? Where, hey, if there's, if it's the middle of June and there's nothing new happening, maybe I can talk about, hey, you guys, remember, let's do like the all-time best linebackers, the all-time best running backs, or I'm going to have a former player on to tell some stories, that kind of stuff. But, I got to tell you, like, it was something when I first started doing the show, I was kind of worried about that. Like, hey, what do you do when there's nothing going on? But I feel like there's almost always something going on. People always say that, and they're right, that the NFL is kind of a year-round sport. College football is not that far behind the NFL. And a lot of the things that people don't like about college football these days when it comes to, players getting paid, NIL, transfer, like a lot of people don't like the transfer portal and players getting paid, but it makes it a little bit more exciting, just in terms of covering it, because, players are moving and changing teams in a rate that's never happened before. And, the whole thing, it's like NFL free agency these days. It really is. So it never really stops. There's only maybe a few weeks out of the year where there's not much going on.
Yeah, and also another thing, not only you covered the football team, but you also covered the basketball team, and I think that's the only two sports that you cover in podcast. So you have plenty of to talk about, 365.
Yeah, and I'm going to do more of this because I barely did any of this last year. I will be talking some more about the baseball team because a good friend of mine, Ray, he is obsessed with college baseball, and he wants to do some segments on the show, and I want to have him on. So when the college baseball season starts, we're going to do a little bit of coverage for that. I only maybe brought up the baseball team a handful of times last year. Because, we're so focused on football and basketball as well. And in basketball, they made, a deep NCAA tournament run. But I do want to add some more baseball coverage this year because it's something I didn't do enough of last year.
Does the college baseball season usually start like in about a month from now at the end of January? Is that
Yeah. Yeah, that's about right. It's like end of January into early February, something like that is when it starts, and then it goes up until, I mean, I think it goes into, May, like around that time, or regionals, and then if you get to the College World Series, I guess it goes into June.
Yeah, basically before the summer break starts for everybody. Um, so College World Series was definitely a crazy one. Last year, the College World Series last year, that was crazy to see. Great games as well in the College World Series playoffs. I believe there was one picture. I don't think it was in the World Series, but it was definitely in the playoffs that had like over 140 pitches in a complete game. Um, you know, that was nuts.
Yeah, I do recall that too. That was crazy.
Like over 100 plus over 140, 50 pitches. I was just like
That's wild. His arm was probably ready to fall off at the end of that.
100%.
Yeah.
Speaking of baseball, do you also follow the MLB?
Not that much, to be honest. I grew up primarily, obviously, a Marlins fan, but
Yeah,
I'm one of those. I'm one of those South Floridians. There's a lot of apathy down here about baseball. It's just, I don't know. The Marlins organization has disappointed people over time. So there have been years when I followed it more closely than others. Obviously, when they won a couple World Series, I was big into it little bit before and after that, from like 95 through like 2007, 2008. But
yeah.
outside of that, with my professional life pulling me in so many different directions, I just haven't had as much time for baseball. I get into it, playoff time every year, like most people do.
Oh yeah, and as for the Marlins, they were actually in the playoffs this past October, but only for they got swept. I think they got swept in the
Yeah.
wild card by the Phillies, which was a surprise. But then again, the Diamondbacks, with that bye week, that killed the Dodgers. That bye week killed the Dodgers. As for the DS series. Um, any future goals do you want to achieve for the Lockdown Teams podcast?
Yeah, I just want to keep growing. We see, and I'm always thankful and humbled whenever we can just increase the subscriber count from people on YouTube. I always appreciate when people subscribe. Hopefully the audio version, I enjoy growing that as well. And that's really that's all I can hope to do. I try to be a little bit better every day, and I try to make the show a little bit more far reaching every single day. And yeah, I enjoy what I do. I don't want to, reinvent the wheel. I just think people appreciate the information. They appreciate the frequency in which we do it. And I want more people to keep finding it. That's all I can really hope for.
Cool. And do you have any advice for those who want to cover a team or a league channel? And if anybody wants to cover like sports in their channel or whatnot, uh, what advice do you have on how do they get that audience? If they have, a specific different audience, how to get that sports audience?
Yeah. A certain amount of patience is required, because you may not be able to get yourself on the map right away, but
Yeah.
I think if you can put enough tape out there and put enough things in the archives, I think eventually people will start to find it and start enjoying what you do. And also, I've learned a lot, within the last couple of years on how to try to maximize digital content, to really, I mean, things like headlines need to pop. I mean, you need to have keywords and buzzwords in your headlines,
Yeah.
and yeah, and you got to get to the point, when you're covering something, try to give your most important most important information. I usually try to lead with it. It's not to say like, you want to give away all your good stuff, in 2 minutes and then you're just rambling the rest of the time. But, try to get to the point quickly, because if you've got a great story you want to talk about, but then you're going to say, oh, you're going to talk about something else for 10 minutes. Oh, now I want to get to the people may not be around 10 minutes later. Right. So, yeah. So that's really it. That's really it for me, persistence, patience, and, try to get to the point and just, try to cover things from an angle that people would be interested in, right? You try to teach people something, try to entertain people. I think those are the most important things anybody out there has to focus on.
Yeah, that's why for the Doctor Sports podcast, the limit is usually 30 to 40 minutes because, nobody wants to be there for, 3 hours about the same team. If you're a show called First Take, that for 2 hours you're basically covering multiple sports, which is a show I watch, when I can. But if it's about a team, people will be like, oh, I might listen to this for half an hour when I'm not doing anything, just to see what's going on with my team.
Right, exactly. And like just people's attention spans are not that high. Like if I'm looking through YouTube and I want to watch people's videos covering sports, like if I see like a 15-minute video, I'm like, okay, I can get into that. If I see a 2-hour video on there, I don't have that kind of time. It's like I think episode length is important. I think if if people see like, oh, here's a topic I'm interested in, like I want to see what they're saying about Ohtani, right? If you search Ohtani on YouTube and a 20-minute video pops up, okay, I can watch that. Or no, I don't want to watch 3 hours of this, but I can watch 20 minutes of it.
Absolutely. And as for interviews, like this, going on for an hour is okay because you have to talk about. And, people are interested to hear your background, to hear your stories and how you got to this point. And that, for an hour interviews, that's, that's okay because people don't be like, why did this interview cut short? I want to listen to more of their stories. That's okay with an interview. But, with just on a certain topic, or, a recap, people want to only listen to it for like a good half an hour or so because they don't want to have them keep ranting and raving on the same topic, like a Cowboys loss 31-10, for example. So, which I'm still stunned about that because yes, they were on the road, but then again, the Bills, I don't know, they're a tricky team to follow right now. That's all I would say about the Bills. And I covered the Dolphins, so you know about the Bills as well. So they're, I don't know, it's crazy. This year people are saying, "Oh, the Jets are going to be a Super Bowl contender." Well, look what happened at Week 1, and then they made it. And then the Dolphins. I know the Dolphins are always going to be very good as well. The Patriots are going to struggle, but I'm going to ask you this: what team in the AFC you think is a legitimate threat to go to the Super Bowl?
I still think the Chiefs. I know that at times they've had their more ups and downs than I've expected this season. But I would bet my money on Patrick Mahomes being the guy that I would trust the most in a close game. And like I didn't think they were going to. What's that?
Despite their wide receivers, they got rid of Tyreek Hill. So
yeah. Oh, right. Which is I'm cool with that because he's a Miami Dolphin. He's been playing very well. Yeah. And they still have Travis Kelce and their defense has been doing a pretty good job. So in the AFC, I still think the Chiefs are the team to beat, but Baltimore has been an incredible story this year. And for me, like the last few years, I've always said with Baltimore, like if Lamar Jackson can stay healthy, which he hadn't done it in the last few years, that team could be really dangerous. So I wouldn't sleep on Baltimore. Even as somebody who covers the Dolphins, I'm not so sure. Like there are definitely concerns in that they tend to beat up on the bad teams and struggle against the good teams. So I still need to see them prove it. And they'll probably, when it comes to the playoffs, they'll probably have to play somebody on the road in cold weather, which is, always a difficult thing for them historically come playoff time. But the thing I will say about the Dolphins on their behalf is the defense has been getting better, with Jalen Ramsey being healthy and Bradley Chubb has been playing at a Pro Bowl level on the D line. I don't rule them out either. And Buffalo, I thought you said it right on Buffalo. They're kind of an unpredictable team because in their worst games this year, they've looked terrible, but in their best games, they look like they can beat anybody. And they destroyed the Dolphins earlier this year, way back in September, but they kind of embarrassed the Dolphins when they faced them in Buffalo. And, I know Josh Allen is a guy who, he can throw too many interceptions from time to time, but when he's on, he's really hard to stop, and he's so big and he runs, he's hard to take down. So I don't rule them out either.
It's crazy because when the Bills lost to Denver, before Denver it was right at the time Denver got hot with that winning streak. Everybody thought the Bills' season was over because they were having a situation with Diggs, and now they fired their offensive coordinator. I believe their defense coordinator as well. So once that happened, it's like, oh, are they for real? I mean, everybody thinks they're for real, but can they contend for one playoff run? Because all they've been doing for the last couple of years is lose into the first round. That needs to change.
Yeah.
So now, what about for the national conference? What do you think on the other side?
Yeah, I like San Francisco and Philadelphia. The Eagles. That's one of the more impressive overall teams I've watched this year. But San Francisco, they got the head-to-head win, and they really seem to have kind of rediscovered themselves. Because I remember, like, earlier this year, people were like, "Oh, this Brock Purdy is terrible now, and this team doesn't know what they're doing." They're hitting their stride again. Purdy playing well. Christian McCaffrey's a weapon. San Francisco's a really complete team. I would say the same thing about Philadelphia. And I know they've developed a nice rivalry the last couple of years. I think I expect the NFC Championship probably to go between those two teams again. I think that they'll probably end up matching up to decide the Super Bowl. But the Eagles are, one of the reasons why I'm so impressed by the Eagles is their offensive line is just, they're old school. Like, they are just so powerful up front. And, what they do with the whole tush push with Jalen Hurts. I mean, yeah, he gets a little shove from behind him, but at the same time, this guy squats like a crazy, like, he's got some of the strongest legs I've ever seen. So a lot of that is just the sheer strength of Hurts, who's a really impressive quarterback. So I could probably see one of those two teams getting out of the NFC.
But speaking of which, the Eagles are playing, as we're recording this, tonight versus Seattle. They lost a few of their games, but, from your impression, despite losing 2 in a row, they can still contend very well. But we'll see how could they test versus the Seahawks. And also for the rest of the schedule, as we're recording this. And if they meet versus San Francisco again in the NFC Championship game, the ratings will go off the roof because that is a big rivalry. And we saw it last time when they faced off each other just a few weeks ago. There were a bunch of fights going on.
Yeah.
If that happens again for an NFC Championship game, I can tell you, whatever game is going on during that Sunday or whatever day of the week for the playoff game, everybody will be watching that game.
Yeah, no doubt. I know I'll be watching, and I know you will be too.
Yes, indeed. And hopefully, I know there is a so-called Lockdown NFL. Hopefully, maybe you can go on that show during that, after that game to give your takes on it, because I want to hear your thoughts on that game if that happens to be the case. But or maybe just after the season's through, give your thoughts on the whole season. But we'll see who will go to the Super Bowl, because last year was the Chiefs and Eagles. People are saying, it could happen again. It could definitely happen again. But you know, remember the teams got rid of Tyreek Hill. Does that make a big difference? Who knows? Because I've never seen them drop so many balls. Because when I watched the Patriots game on the Red Zone channel yesterday, I was just like, hold on, what is wrong with what's wrong with Kelsey? He keeps dropping those balls. He's supposed to catch them all to make this game on ice. Like, what in the world is going on with Travis Kelsey? Like, is he hurt? Is he tired? Is it a Super Bowl hangover, which people are speculating because Mahomes looked very tired in the last game because, especially after that argument with the refs, the same refs that were at the last Super Bowl. Like, what's your thoughts on that? Like, is it a completely Super Bowl hangover? Is it the effects of the previous loss to the Bills, or like, how did they fix this?
I think there's a little bit of everything you said, especially like coming off that loss against the Bills, which is like, Mahomes was very upset about the referees, but it's like, what are you upset about? Kadarius Toney was lined up off sides. It was clear as day. Like you can't like. So you're saying, oh, they should have allowed that just because it was such a nice play? You broke the rules. He was lined up off sides. You have to by the rules. You can't just say, "Oh, we're going to count it because it was such a nice play." So there probably was some hangover from that. I believe in that. I think in the NFL, when you lose an emotional, tough game, because and the Bills, I was talking about them earlier, is a really physical team. So you go through 60 minutes against Buffalo, even without the emotional stuff, you're going to be feeling the aches and pains of that, a week later. So I think that had a lot to do with it. And yeah, the Super Bowl hangover. I mean, you reach you're a deep playoff team every single year, like Kansas City is. There's going to be some extra wear and tear that comes out of that. So I could see that coming into play as well.
And that could also happen for the effects of the Eagles because were in that same game. Of course, they want revenge, but they still, the last game was still during that time in February, and it's the same thing, same Super Bowl hangover. That's why it's very hard to do something like the Patriots did for 20 years, and which was still incredible for them to do this. That's never happened before. Even the Cowboys didn't do that for 20 years in 90, from the 90s to whatever, until they fired the coach. I think it was, they fired the coach.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll see what happens going forward. But that's some NFL talk for you guys, and that's gonna be it for this video. You have anything else you want to promote to share?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much. It's always nice chatting with you. Just you can follow my show on X, formerly Twitter, at Locked On Canes, just all one word. That's where anytime I have a new episode or anything like that, we post it there on X at Locked On Canes. So thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And before we go, is there any other shows that are on Locked On Sports Network you want people to check out?
Yeah, I think you mentioned Locked On NFL. I think they do a good job. Locked On Sports Today, that gives you a mix of everything. Like you tune into that, streaming 24 hours a day. You could see me or any host at any given time. I think that's always a good thing to look into. And everybody on the network works really hard. So yeah, if you can not only support me but support my colleagues there, I'd really appreciate it.
And I will tell us a little reminder, what days are you on certain shows so people can also tune in on there as well.
Cool. Yeah, Locked On Canes every day. And you can hear me on the radio. You can get it from anywhere after Dolphins games and after Hurricanes football games. Obviously, they do have a bowl game coming up on the 28th. So you can check that out. Or after Dolphins games, you can hear me on 560 WQAM in Miami. You can get it on the Odyssey app. We talk about the games afterwards. But yeah, Locked On Canes is every day. During the college football season, Fridays at 11 a.m., I do the Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. So, and you never know where else I'm going to turn up.
Alright, well, thank you for doing this, and thank everybody for watching. Alright, guys, so hope y'all enjoyed that interview with Alex Donno. Big shout out to him for not only discovering me on Instagram, give me a follow on there, but also agreeing to be our first interview of 2024. I wasn't sure at the time that was going to be the first interview of 2024, because I was still waiting to see about the awards and all that stuff. And that was, but just agreeing to be interviewed in general really means a lot. Go check out the Locked On Kings podcast on the Locked On Sports Network. So please stay tuned for great videos every day, daily on the Locked On Kings podcast network. Which, if you look up any Locked On team privacy sports podcast from the Locked On Sports Network, they do an episode every single day, and it's incredible of what they do. So, go check out the Locked On Kings podcast for episodes every single day on your podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts. Also on YouTube. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next week, most likely, or the weekend after that. We'll see how I feel. Because we also have President's Week after that as well, in 2 weeks. I'll see you next time for another edition of for the next episode of Chilling3000 Hangouts for episode 121. So long. Don't forget to subscribe to the Chilling3000 Network for more great content like this one.